before the world even had a chance to process the loss of Pope Francis. A discovery emerged, one that would ignite a storm of reflection, speculation, and deep spiritual curiosity. The Pope, known for his humble demeanor and deep spiritual insight, left behind something far more profound than just the legacy of his teachings or the memory of his final public appearance. Tucked away within the confidential walls of the Vatican, hidden among personal archives and sealed notes, lay a handwritten letter. A letter not meant for public eyes, at least not immediately, but destined to surface at a time when the Church needed guidance most. It was addressed to one man, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. At first, the existence of such a letter seemed no more than rumor. Whispers about a personal farewell, perhaps even a message of succession, had circulated in the shadows of Rome for years. Some said it had been lost among Vatican paperwork. Others believed it was only ever a myth. But the truth, it seems, is more compelling than fiction. The letter has now come to light, genuine, intimate, and signed by the Pope himself. And with it, a quiet storm has been unleashed. For this message, while not official doctrine or formal appointment, carries something arguably more powerful: the Pope's heart, his intentions, and a silent passing of the torch. What exactly did Pope Francis see in Cardinal Tagle that moved him to write this letter in private? Was it a farewell from one servant of God to another, or was it a carefully timed act of foresight meant to guide the Church long after his final breath? The letter, now confirmed by Vatican sources, is deeply personal and full of pastoral counsel. It reflects not a command, but a call, not a directive, but a hope. Within its lines, Pope Francis is said to have written, "I entrust you to carry forward the spirit of service." Simple words, yet they hold the weight of generations. It is moments like these that remind the world of the quiet gravity of leadership. While the global Catholic community reels from the passing of a man who shepherded more than 1 billion faithful with gentleness and vision, something stirs within the heart of the Church. A new question takes shape. Could this letter be a sign of what's to come? The timing is uncanny. Released just hours after Pope Francis passed away during the sacred days of Holy Week, a period that marks suffering, death, and resurrection, the message feels almost prophetic. It does not name a successor. It does not presume to direct the College of Cardinals, but in its tone, in its trust, and in its timing, it says more than an official document ever could. The emotional weight of this letter is intensified by the context of Francis's final days. In his last appearance, though frail and visibly struggling, he offered blessings with the same serenity that had defined his papacy. Behind the scenes, he battled severe illness, double pneumonia, and a serious lung infection had left him in a critical state. Yet his thoughts, it now appears, were not only on his own suffering, but on the future of the Church he loved with his entire being. For Pope Francis, vision was never about grand gestures. It was about gentle nudges, spiritual whispers, and preparing others to lead. Cardinal Tagle, often described as a man of quiet strength and deep humility, may seem an unlikely figure to stir global discussion. Born far from the Vatican's marble walls, raised in Manila without the weight of legacy or the spotlight of political influence, he walked a different path, one shaped by service, compassion, and theological depth. His rise in the Church was not marked by ambition, but by faithfulness. He preached with warmth, acted with compassion, and earned trust not through rank, but through integrity. It's that very trust that built the foundation of his relationship with Pope Francis. Over the years, observers noted the unique bond between the two, a bond not rooted in power, but in a shared pastoral vision. They both spoke the language of the people. They both believed the Church must be a field hospital, not a fortress. And now, in this hidden letter, perhaps we are witnessing the final act of that brotherhood, one that seeks to guide the faithful long after the original voice has gone silent. The emergence of this message has sparked debates across Vatican corridors and Catholic households alike. What does this mean for the next conclave? Was this the Pope's way of gently pointing toward a successor without interfering with the sacred voting process? Or was it a deeply human act, one of mentorship, care, and final encouragement to a man he held dear? Whatever the case, the letter's timing and tone are hard to ignore. It appeared when confusion could easily take root, when grief might cloud direction, when the Church, mourning its shepherd, needed a reminder of what matters most. And so, through paper and ink, Pope Francis offers not control, but clarity. Not answers, but inspiration. As this story unfolds, one thing is certain: the voice of Pope Francis still echoes, not through headlines or ceremonies, but through a message meant for one man, yet resonating with the entire world. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle did not rise from palaces or power. His roots are in the streets of Manila, where life's deepest lessons are taught not through lectures, but through love shown in the smallest of actions. In those neighborhoods, faith is not a performance. It's a quiet offering. It lives in the shared meals between neighbors, the prayers whispered in candlelit chapels, and the unspoken solidarity of people who have little but give much. That's where his heart was formed, and that's exactly what caught the attention of Pope Francis. The two men, though separated by continents and years, were bound by something deeper than titles. They were both molded by poverty, by simplicity, and by a conviction that the Church must never forget its mission to walk beside the poor, the wounded, and the forgotten. To both Francis and Tagle, faith was never about elevation, it was about incarnation. It was about kneeling, listening, and serving. And when Pope Francis first met Tagle, he didn't just see a clergyman. He saw a mirror, a reflection of his own beliefs, values, and hopes for a more merciful church. Their first meeting, though respectful and formal, quickly blossomed into a relationship grounded in spiritual affinity. Francis often spoke with admiration of those who led with humility rather than hierarchy, and Tagle fit the description in every way. He leads not with his position, but with his compassion, the Pope once remarked about him. In Tagle, he saw the rare combination of intellect and innocence, leadership and tenderness, doctrine and dialogue, and as time passed, that mutual trust only grew deeper and more visible. In the year 2019, the world witnessed a decisive gesture. Pope Francis appointed Cardinal Tagle as prefect of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples, a department often referred to as the very heart of the Church's missionary efforts. This wasn't just a prestigious role, it was a symbol, a sign, a spotlight. It told the world that the Pope didn't value political maneuvering or ambition. He placed his trust in those who embraced the gospel with sincerity, who put service above self, and who could carry the weight of the Church's mission with integrity. Tagle's appointment marked a turning point, not only for him personally, but for those observing the Church's future from the sidelines. It was a statement that change was not only possible, but already underway. He began appearing more frequently alongside Pope Francis, not just in public ceremonies, but behind the scenes, during moments that required careful discernment and delicate diplomacy. He became a voice the Pope leaned on, a presence at his side in synods, humanitarian missions, and pastoral decisions. One fellow cardinal, speaking anonymously, once said, "He listens before he speaks. That's rare here." In a world quick to react and slow to understand, that trait stood out like a beacon. As Tagle's visibility increased, so did the speculation. Conversations within the Vatican walls grew louder. Was this man being quietly prepared to take on an even greater role? Was he being mentored not just as a loyal servant, but as a potential shepherd for the global Church? The appointment, the closeness, the trust, it all pointed to something deliberate, something unfolding. And in the aftermath of Pope Francis's death, the long-hidden letter seems to give those speculations new weight. But to truly grasp what this letter means, we must go beyond the surface. It is not enough to know that it exists, we must understand what it contains. The letter was not composed in haste or dictated out of protocol. It was written by hand, thoughtfully, intentionally. According to those close to the matter, its pages are not filled with commands or clerical instructions. Instead, they offer something far more enduring: lessons of leadership, reminders of mercy, and a vision for a church that keeps its heart open. Pope Francis, it seems, did not write this message to an heir to power, but to a brother in faith. The letter is said to carry themes that have always been at the core of Francis's pontificate: servant leadership, global unity, cultural sensitivity, and above all, proximity to the poor. In one noted passage, the Pope speaks of a church that weeps with its people, rejoices with its people, and never abandons them to the silence of suffering. These words, reportedly shared in the letter, are not just poetic, they are prophetic. It is no wonder that this letter, once hidden, now echoes across continents. It is being discussed not only in seminaries and bishoprics, but among laypeople, scholars, and the faithful. It has become a symbol of a spiritual relay, one man finishing his race and handing the torch to another. Yet, unlike a political endorsement or a formal decree, this message is gentle. It guides, it inspires, it invites reflection. It respects the sacred tradition of papal succession, yet it plants seeds in the soil of possibility. As the world reads between the lines, many ask, is this the beginning of a new chapter, or the final footnote of one that is ending? Could Cardinal Tagle truly be the one Pope Francis quietly believed in, or is the message meant to influence, not imposed to guide the church in spirit, not by force. The letter, like the man who wrote it, resists easy interpretation. But what cannot be denied is the impact it is already having. In a time when the church faces both great opportunity and great challenge, such a message is more than timely, it is transformative. From the moment the envelope was opened, a profound silence fell over those present. The air grew still, as if the very walls of the Vatican recognized the significance of what had just been uncovered. It wasn't just paper and ink, it was a legacy crystallized in handwriting, a parting gift that felt more like a torch passed than a simple farewell. The letter bore no titles, no seals of power, and no instructions typical of a bureaucratic institution. Instead, it was alive with something far deeper: wisdom. Not the kind drawn from authority, but the kind born of decades of prayer, suffering, love, and listening. In the sloping lines of Pope Francis's familiar handwriting, there were no commands, only reflections, no decrees, only discernment. The voice of the Pope rang through the page like a gentle bell. "The Church does not belong to those who seek power," he wrote with unmistakable clarity. "It belongs to those who serve." Those few words seemed to illuminate everything. They were not just guidance for Cardinal Tagle. They were a manifesto, one that offered a glimpse into the soul of Francis's pontificate, and the kind of leadership he believed would carry the Church forward through the storms ahead. He called for humility, not hierarchy, for compassion, not control, for a church that doesn't preach from a distance, but kneels in the dust beside those who suffer. Francis envisioned a church that isn't afraid of transformation, one that evolves without ever forgetting its ancient roots. And within that vision, he saw something essential in Tagle, something irreplaceable. One line in particular stood out, searing itself into the memory of everyone who read it. "Louis, you understand the hearts of the people. Never lose that." That simple phrase was not an endorsement in the political sense. It did not announce Tagle as the next pope, nor did it interfere with the sacred process of election. But it did something arguably more powerful. It revealed the spiritual inheritance that Francis entrusted to him. "The future needs leaders who carry mercy in both hands," the letter continued, echoing the same values Francis had lived out on the global stage. This message, filled with tenderness and resolve, also addressed the broader concerns of the world. Pope Francis spoke with urgency about issues that had always weighed heavily on his heart: poverty, the plight of migrants, environmental care, and the responsibility of faith leaders to act not just as guardians of tradition, but as protectors of humanity. These were not abstract points. They were lived truths, central to both Francis and Tagle's ministries. And in a final quiet flourish, the Pope penned a blessing that now reads like a spiritual baton being passed. "May you walk forward not with fear, but with faith." To those closest to the late pontiff, the letter simply confirmed what they had suspected for years: that Cardinal Tagle wasn't just a favored aide or a trusted voice. He was being prepared, slowly and subtly, for something far more profound. A silent mentoring had been taking place, one that did not aim for succession in title, but for continuity in spirit. As the faithful around the world began to absorb the meaning of this letter, one question lingered in the air like incense after Mass. Was this letter a private message between spiritual companions, or was it a public prophecy disguised in intimacy? The debate only intensified when another phrase surfaced. A line that had once seemed like a passing compliment now took on an entirely new weight. "You carry my spirit." At the time, many dismissed the phrase as nothing more than affection, a kind comment,